Hello, everyone. My name is Raj Pandey. I'm the president of the Youth for Heart organization, and I'm here with Mr. Chapman. And on my first day here in this hospital at St. Joseph's, he really guided me, and we had a lot of great conversations. Like, he's helped me a lot in understanding how the emergency department works. That's where I work. So, Mr. Chapman, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Eric Chapman. Mr. Chapman is my dad, so just putting that out there. I've been in healthcare, health insurance, healthcare administration since the late 80s. And I retired about a year and a half ago and got really, really bored. And so traveled a bit, but then got bored. So I volunteer here at St. Joseph's Hospital Medical Center in Phoenix. In the ED.
I haven't really had the chance to like work in a hospital before. Like I've tried so many times since my freshman year of high school to get volunteer opportunities in a hospital, but it's been really hard, like especially in like the Phoenix area. They're very competitive. Like everybody wants to like volunteer and work here at Joseph's or in other places. So when I first came here, like Mr. Chapman just showed me around. He helped me like I said, like understand a lot of the things in the hospital in like the emergency department. And yeah, we're just here to ask some questions and get an idea for you guys of how everything works. So let's get started here. So these are just some basic questions, like, the first question is, what is your reason for being a volunteer here at St. Joseph's?
I think I mean, beyond being, I was bored, but I really like the hospital environment. There's always something going on, particularly in the emergency department. There's a lot of activity. And some of the units, whether it's neuro or, med surge and all that, they might have, 50 beds or 40 beds or whatever, and they're going to turn them over probably once, like half of them or a third of them a day. It's not a lot. I mean, they're in there for rehabilitation or, surgery or whatever. But in the ED, we have probably 90 spaces, beds, rooms, and chairs. Chairs are for when people can still walk. So we don't want to chew up a bed or a room for them. And so they're very comfortable. They're recliners, so they're pretty cool. The big thing is it never stops. I mean, the ED department, emergency department probably turns over about probably 3 times a day, meaning there's probably 300 to 400 people that go through the ED, and it never stops. I never sit down. Obviously, you know that because you're here. But I really enjoy it, and it's just a matter of they're in the worst day of their life, or probably the worst day in like a long time, and they're unsure what's going to happen. They're unsure of their medical condition of themselves or a family member, and so you're just there to make them feel better and explain what's going to happen and how it's going to work. And if they have any requests, and like I told you when you started here, you just see it in their face. They're like, should I ask? And I'm like, is there something you need? Like, can I get a blanket? Because they might have been outside in shorts and a t-shirt, and they come in here and it's cold. So can I get you a blanket? And they're so appreciative. And it's probably one of the worst days of their life. And so you just try to make them, comfortable and answer questions and get the family members what they need in order to kind of endure this really stressful situation. That's why I like it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Good idea. Yeah. Uh, yeah, I agree with a lot of the things you said, and I just like to say this, like Mr. Chapman, you do a lot, like as an adult volunteer, like I feel like you do way more, or like not even way more, just like you volunteer like with so much dedication, and you do way more than you need to, in my opinion. Like you fill out even like the water stations and stuff, and like sometimes the nurses clean the bed for me. Like I've noticed when I like volunteer alone, like sometimes they just do it for me, but Mr. Chapman, you always make sure like to always get every bed and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Just trying to help out. I think the big thing is that, oh, I'll hold this, is that nurses are, they've gone to college, they got their bachelor's degree or sometimes their master's, and they are the 100% support for their patients, their assigned patients, probably two, maybe three if they're really super busy. And they need to be doing other things than like cleaning up a room or straightening up the bed or changing linens and all that, letting them do what they're trained and licensed to do, which is delivering healthcare and meds and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just there kind of like a backup and also another set of eyes because sometimes they don't get back in the room every 10 minutes, and I can do that. So I can be another set of eyes for the nurses and clinical staff to help out. So yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually like a very good way, like just being another set of eyes for the nurses. Yeah, that's very helpful for them. I feel like as a junior volunteer, sometimes I just feel like neglected because I'm like, yeah, like I'm not even like 18, so there's like a lot less of like what I'm capable of doing. Like I tried asking like Mr. Medina, who manages all like the junior volunteers. I asked him, "Hey, is there any more volunteering I can do like after the summer?" He said, "No, not really,
Yeah,
because
because it's 18 or over, and there's that whole program. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't think it's because of a capacity or capabilities. I think it's mainly liability of like you're not an adult, so then they have to make sure your parents know and all this other crazy. Under the junior volunteer program, they kind of get through all that all at once, and these 200 plus junior volunteers come in, descend, and then every department that are volunteering in know what they can and can't do. So it's mainly that, but it's I rewarding and it's worth waiting till you're 18. I'll tell you.
yeah, it is. All right, next question. Yeah, around how many patients have you noticed are admitted in a day or in a week?
I would say probably about a third of what, maybe not that much. I would say less than a third are actually admitted. Mainly they're coming in, they have a fractured wrist, or I mean, there's that kind of stuff you don't need to stay over unless you need surgery or whatever. So I think overall, maybe less than a third that are actually admitted. The big challenge right now that we're having in the ED nationwide, it's not just St. Joe's or Phoenix in particular, is there's a lot of people that don't have health insurance anymore because of various reasons. The Affordable Care Act subsidies expired and all that happened. And so these people can't afford health insurance. So what they'll do is they'll go to a doctor's office saying, "Hey, I don't feel well," and their doctor's office can say, "How are you going to pay for this today? Do you have insurance, or are you going to pay for the credit card or cash?" And they're like, "None of the above." And so they're like, "Well, you, you're not being seen." Same thing with like urgent care standalone facilities that are out there in the community. Same thing. They can deny care based on ability to pay. But by federal law, emergency departments and emergency rooms cannot, and they cannot determine treatment plans based on ability to pay. So they don't even collect payment information until after the patient is seen and assessed and a treatment plan is created for the patient. Then the registration folks will come in and gather that payment information. So a lot of these folks that are coming in probably could get care in a primary care setting or an urgent care setting, but they can't pay for it. And so they're not all emergent cases. They're just kind of, I don't know where else to go, and I still not feeling well. So that's, I think, a big driver. So that's why there's not as many admitted. They're just treated. And so they're trying to get healthcare the best way they know how. And it's not their fault. Like, I think it's like, I don't know what the huge percentage, there's like 60% of Americans are two paychecks away from homelessness. That's terrifying. So a lot of these people are without health insurance, so they can't afford it. And so what happens is they bill them, and then they're like, I can set up a payment plan, or I can try, or whatever. Like, I can't pay anything. I'm homeless, blah, blah, blah. And the hospital systems nationwide will just write it off and just consider it charitable care, and they can take that against their expense. I mean, their revenue and all that. So it's not a great process. It's just a fact of life right now.
Yeah. I also remember you told me like anybody's admitted in ED, and yeah, like most like when I first entered ED, I was really intimidated. Like there was that one guy who was screaming like on the top of his lungs. I thought it was like like he really was suffering an injury or something, but like Mr. Chapman later comforted me. He said, "Yeah,
There's the other factor, and not just EDs. It's just healthcare delivery across the board in general. Are unable to, well, they come in and they're able to uh, address the drug seeking behavior. There's people that come in and they want drugs, and there's this whole opioid epidemic, and then they withdrew all that and they stopped prescribing it. So a lot of people are drug seeking because they're addicted, and it's a medical condition, and they're just like, you're not getting opioids, and you're not getting pain meds, and you can just see the look on their face because they think that's going to be the way to go. So it's not always drug seeking, but sometimes people kind of, I notice some patients, and this is not disparaging against them. They're just challenged, and when they talk to the physician or the physician's assistant or whatever, giving them a rundown of their symptoms, it's hard to figure out what's really wrong with them, and because they're not very eloquent or articulate about their describing their severity of their symptoms and all that, so it takes a lot to get through all of that. And sometimes they're called frequent flyers, and nationwide, not just here, that come in a lot because they don't have insurance and they have ongoing chronic conditions, and that's really challenging to see these people back in because they have no other option. They're just and they have edema, which is swelling of their legs, and all these other things that could be treated more successfully and better outcomes if they were getting ongoing primary care, and that's just not happening. They just can't afford it, so it's just sad. So that's why I'm here. I want to help.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. I agree also. Uh, well, next question. What does the age range of your patients look like? Is it mostly like younger patients that like visit often, or is it like a bit on the older side?
I would say mainly because of what I spoke of earlier with the unable to get health care. I think they're probably 50 plus. We see a lot of, at least through my lens, so I can't speak for the organization, but they're just an older, like 40, 45, 50 plus. They're having more complex situations, chronic conditions that are impacting their health. The ones that are younger, like under 30, are accidents, like I broke my thumb or I did this or and they come in an ambulance and they tripped or whatever. So there's that factor, but I say mainly the ones that are younger are accidents. And then the ones that are older are chronic conditions or exacerbated symptoms because they're not getting the health care that they need. So luckily there's a place for them to obtain that, and that's through the ED.
All right. Uh, what is the most dangerous injury you've seen a patient have?
Wow. Well, I volunteered also over at Banner University on McDowell, and I think, wow. Because just to kind of explain, there's trauma and then there's the ED. Trauma are when you see these, TV shows and they bring these people in with gunshot wounds and limbs broken off. And that's not really accurate. Those go to the trauma bay, and those are doctors and nurses, and they're there waiting for those patients that are brought in by helicopter or by they've got massive injuries. Those don't come through the ED. We get everybody else. So what we see as far as major trauma doesn't really happen from our side of it. What they actually see, from my perspective, on some of the worst, um, it's how to explain it. It's when you're seeing that. I'm not a clinician. I don't have a medical degree. I don't have a nursing degree or anything like that. But you, after a while, and I've been in this business, so to speak. I ran a triage center where we had 250 nurses and all that. So I kind of got it. And so seeing people come in and they have like they're saying, my grandpa here, and he's really having tough difficulty talking. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, and I said, how are you feeling today? Are you feeling good? And he smiles and it's crooked. And then I'm like, okay, let me help you over here. And you feel weakness in their hand. And I'm like, that could possibly be a stroke. And the faster you get that treatment, I can't diagnose, neither can nurses, but you see the symptoms. I'm like, he needs to be moved up. He needs to see a nurse now to assess things like that. You just see people coming in with some really, it just from a layman's personality or layman's perspective, you kind of see them and you're like, I don't know, something's wrong. And then when you've seen it several times and you've been through training of how to recognize stroke, it's concerning. And then people coming in and they're saying they have chest pain and they're sweating, and you're like, yeah. So you just kind of give the high sign to the triage nurse, and they address that. So it's kind of like I said earlier, with second set of eyes. The big thing here versus Banner, because they kind of self-register when they come in, is that the nurse sees them immediately when they walk in. They take their blood pressure and their pulse and all this other stuff, and they kind of do a general like, what's going on with you today, and then they prioritize best based on that. So I think the other thing that for the most, I don't know, concerning, which is pretty common, is that people come in and their diabetes is kind of out of control, and they're you can see the symptoms of either too much blood sugar or not enough, and so you kind of recognize that after 20, 30 years of seeing it, and then you kind of like, hey, what was going on today? And they're like, I had a family member come in, and they were all dressed up, and they'd gone to Easter service at the church, and then they had this big Easter dinner, and she was textbook too much blood sugar. So it's just like, looked at the triage nurse. She like, okay. And then I went back later, and I said, how was that? And she said, this is a banner. She's like, it was 572, and normal's like 100, 120, 150 max. And they were at 572. So it's just like, that causes all kinds of other problems. So it's just that they're coming in, and it's just like, and it feels good when you're trying to help somebody and identify what you can do for them. Not me, but the organization. So yeah, long answer to a short question.
Yeah, but it was a great
I know,
answer
yeah.
though. It was very detailed. And that's kind of what we want here, just like detailed answers to all this for you guys. And what I think, like you've already told me this, I might be able to answer this, but what are the busiest times in the
Usually you'll see it pick up in the afternoons um, because I think in the afternoon time period, and then about 3:30, it really starts ramping up because doctors' offices and urgent cares are going to start closing at 5, and they call to get an appointment and they can't. They're like, go to the ER. Like that's their standard response. So they're not available. They can't get an appointment or be seen. So when they start closing up for the day, then you see a bigger influx. And so what the nurses and the triage nurse and the charge nurses are trying to do is clear out as many of those patients that they can, either getting admitted or getting discharged to accommodate that kind of influx. And it's just demand management of the influx of patients coming in. And and they're like, when's the best time you should go to the ER? And it's like, usually during the day, to be frank, because you have all these specialists, you have all these healthcare workers, and all these people that are uh, with the CAT scans and the MRIs and X-rays and all that stuff. They're all there, and then they have doctors that are working. And in the nighttime, they're all on call, so it might delay a little bit. They have to call somebody in, or have to track them down, that kind of stuff. So during the day is probably the best way to go. But you can't, with an ED kind of situation, you can't pick and choose. Like, I think I'll wait with this chest pain till, I don't know, tomorrow morning. No, don't do that. But the big thing is just, there's availability of professionals that can help.
I just have like this is just kind of a question on my side. Like I know July 4th has like passed. Today's like July 9th. So have you like did you have a shift on July 4th?
I did not, but over the years and volunteering at other locations of in the valley, it's usually people are like, you see these things on Facebook, and they're like hands blown up from fireworks and all that, and burns and all that kind of stuff. Yes, that happens. I think that's probably um, more of healthcare professionals like, please don't hold fireworks in your hands because they're going to explode. But I think the most of that is that everything is closed. It's a national holiday, and so there's no place to go. And I ate too much, I bellyache, or my back hurts, or whatever. And so that's going to be amplified the number of patients coming into any ED, and I think that's a factor. And then you get the dumb people that are like, what were you thinking when you put this in a can and then blew it up? And like I read a meme on Facebook the other day. He goes, hi, I'm an ER nurse, and I'm the first face you're going to see after you say, hold my beer, watch this. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, July 4th is
Yeah.
pretty crazy. And along with the e-bike issues that are happening nowadays.
There's a huge spike. I was reading an article, and they're just like these e-bikes, and they can go really fast. They're not trained, like they're not. You don't have to have like motorcycles license and all that. And the parents, especially in the summertime, they're not supervising, so they're at work, and the kid is like, "Let's go do this," and they're getting hit by cars. They're going, they're not able to control the e-bike very effectively, and they run stop signs because it's just like with bicycles. I don't really care. I don't have to follow the road rules, and they get hit. And I was watching an interview with an ED pediatric physician, and she said these are the bane of my existence. She goes, it is awful what happening to these kids and their parents. They're injured, and they don't have ID on them, and they can't speak, and they're unconscious or whatever, and they're like, I don't know who this child is, and they're having to make decisions and figuring out what they need to do to get that under control. So yeah, it's a big epidemic of e-bike injuries. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, definitely. Uh, how, have you ever witnessed a death in a hospital? If so, how do you cope with it?
Yes, I didn't well, I did witness it. It was after the patient passed, and um, you and my mom was a nurse, my brother was a nurse, and they're part of their, 30 years in a career of nursing. You just know that death is part of the life cycle. You have birth and life and blah, and death. And it's just part of the evolution of that. I also knew a nurse that she was a hospice nurse. And the part of that, which I think are some of the most amazing nurses on the planet because they're dealing with death every day, but they see it as a very clinical, but also a very natural event. And when seeing a patient who has died, and what it's hard because there's not you've done everything you can, and it's you have to understand you haven't failed. I'm speaking as a volunteer, not as anybody who knows what they're talking about. Like I don't. But the big thing is like they've done everything that they can, and it's just a natural course. And my brother's one of his most frustrating moments was, grandma's 94 years old and she's having a heart problem and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, do whatever you can to keep her alive. And they're like, and this is back in the day when they did coronary artery bypass and they cut things into your legs and put them in your heart. Now they do stents, which is much less invasive. But do whatever you can. Like Medicare will pay for it. I want grandma. They're like, you want the physician to crack open your grandmother's chest and do a quadruple bypass. Is that what you want? And they're like, yes, whatever it takes. And as opposed to saying maybe this wasn't the best choice. Yes, it's an option, but it's maybe not the best option for that patient. And having a shared decision making process of where like let's talk about this, not rationally and not logically, but compassionately, saying, hey, this might not be what she wanted. And they're like, I just want her to be around longer. And you have to abide by the family's wishes or the patient's wishes. And then you have the DNRs, which is do not resuscitate. And those patients are like, there's stuff we can do, but they do that. That's not what they want for their life. So it is a nonstop in healthcare delivery challenge because you're having to what's going to happen. You've seen the outcomes. You've seen the challenges with patients with different conditions and problems, and they're like, whatever you do, keep dad alive or whatever. And it's just like, well, he may not be all there when he gets better. And they're like, no, whatever it takes. And they just don't want to say goodbye and let him go. And I can appreciate that from a human standpoint, but it's sometimes from a healthcare delivery standpoint, maybe that's not the best option for that particular patient, and everybody's different. So,
Yeah. I kind of skipped over this question. Uh, how many hours a day do you work?
here at the ED, it's just 4 hours. It's a like little shift. Um, so I could probably do more now that I'm done traveling and doing some other stuff in my personal life. Probably will volunteer a little bit more. What I really like doing with the ED is working with them to find out better ways to do things, seeing it through a different set of eyes, and also from a different organization's perspective. And from my personal, it's process improvement, what makes the most sense. And it's from a non-clinical standpoint. I have nothing to do with clinical decision making, obviously, but it's like, wouldn't it be better if we had this happen before, when you could ask the volunteer do this, and then that would take the burden off the nurse. And they're like, oh yeah, I think that's a better way to clarify that with the volunteers. Not that they aren't capable, not that the clinical and administrative staff don't understand that they do. It's just a matter of like, here's how we can help as volunteers and taking that burden off. And so, is there a little uh, apprehension of having a volunteer who's not a clinically trained person making recommendations? Like I said, my suggestions that I had provided to them are non-clinical because I can't do that for many different reasons. But the big thing is just order and process and patient flow, and why don't we do this versus that? And I did it at Banner as well. It's like, wouldn't it be easier if we did it here and then do this, and it doesn't impact and it'll make the patient flow better. through the ED and things like that. So I really love doing that part as well because that's what I did for 30 years is process improvement and quality improvement.
Do you think so? Now we're kind of shifting the topic a little. Now it's from Mr. Chapman's experience, to also kind of what he's noticed. Like, do you think have you noticed any changes in ED like because of AI?
No, and there's been a lot of articles and a lot of um, what I want to say, studies, and everybody's got an opinion about everything. But for AI in particular, what they're finding is yes, there's studies and they're like, oh, this algorithm and the AI can diagnose better than a doctor. And I'm like, okay, we'll go with that. But isn't the doctor putting the information in your study to say AI identified something that the doctor missed? And it's like, just think of the billions of different combinations of diagnoses. So I don't know if that's really, and there's been studies and commentaries about uh, AI charting for the nurse and the clinicians. The challenge with that is, regardless, the nurse has to review all of it, and when they sign off on it and let it go into the chart, that's their license on the line. So it's a big pushback of saying, I don't want a computer algorithm to figure out what I should be doing or what I should be charting. Um, I think it's going to be a big battle, and I think a lot of companies non healthcare related are finding out this isn't working as well as we thought because you read in the news and they're laying people off and they're going to AI and they're rechanneling and putting all these people on AI. It's got a long way to go because there were some, even in the legal field, they were finding attorneys who are filing appeals and filing different things, and they written by AI, and they're citing non-existent or inaccurate cases. And you know what doesn't go over well with that? The Arizona State Bar Association and also the courts. They're like, oh, no, 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 we're not going to do that. Where they're not even looking at what the AI tool wrote and verifying the citations in their appeal or their case or their filings or whatever. I think it's got a long way, and I think everybody kind of were glamorized by the next shiny thing in technology. I think it's got a long way to go, a long way.
Yeah, like AI, it's still people say that like the least impacted field by AI is healthcare. So yeah, it does definitely have a long way to go. Uh, what do you think uh is the best part of ED?
I think being there, and you have to understand, it's like, why is the ED so expensive? You have all these nurses, all these physicians, all these technicians, X-ray and CT, and all these people are literally being paid while they're waiting for patients. And I think that's oversimplification, but it's the matter of they're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They're paying these people whether a patient comes in or not. And of course, you adjust for staffing. And you're like, okay, we're not so busy. You can go ahead and we'll float you over to med surg, or you can go over to do this. Or if they need more, they bring them in. The problem with it is they have to keep the doors open. So it's going to be a lot of money. So I think just being there for people when they need it the most, like if you get hit by a car, you don't have to worry of like, I might die out here. No, they're going to take you to an ED and they're going to treat you. But if you're like in the middle of the wilderness and you're by yourself and you fall into a canyon, yep, kiss it goodbye because there's nobody's, you can't get them there. And it's just that kind of thing of being there, and all these people are basically waiting and on call to treat patients that are having a really crappy day. So, yeah.
Yeah. And what would you think needs to be improved about ED?
Like again, like I said, not just related to any ED, whether it's St. Joseph's or Banner or whatever. It's just a broad statement. I think it's just a matter of being able to absorb the primary care and urgent care needs of the population that they serve. They're, I think overall, from what I've read and seen and talked to, is there's a really good support for being culturally sensitive and who makes decisions and how to help people through it and all that. I think the big thing is trying to accommodate this influx of ED visits that are probably more appropriately and clinically sound treatment in a primary care urgent care setting, and keeping those people healthier and getting them their meds or getting their treatments before it gets so exacerbated, before they end up in the ED. And I think that's the biggest challenge because you have to staff for it. And these nurses and physicians, obviously train in emergency medicine, but the big thing is a lot of this just is gotten worse because the patient is not able to get primary care, and that you could, if they had gotten a medication or if they'd gotten some treatment before it became severe, would have been a better way to do it. And how do we fix that? Don't know. And I think everyone's scratching their head of how do you ultimately fix this? And there's a billion moving parts to the whole healthcare delivery in the US and worldwide. But the big thing is, I don't know how to fix it. It's really tough. And so you just kind of deal with what you got.
Yeah, deal with what you got.
How
Yeah,
eloquent can I be? So, anyway.
yeah. But yeah, that basically wraps up our interview now. And it's been great with Mr. Chapman. He's given us a lot of insights into the short time that we have. But yeah, it's been really helpful. And I think like you've really just taught us a lot today.
Well, I
So
also want to shout out as far as people in that are still in high school and are not volunteering or want to volunteer or whatever. What in healthcare especially, there are so many career options available to people that are not necessarily hospital based. They could be clinic based or they could be telephonically based. There's a lot of that, and then you don't have to be a doctor or a nurse. You can be a technician. You can draw blood. You can run a X-ray machine, be an X-ray tech. You don't have to go to 4 years of college. You're going to try it, and you can go to a local program and you can get your license or whatever in like 9 months. Try it out if you want to do it. And if you're like interested in radiology, become an x-ray tech and watch how it works and all that. So you're not like at the end of a 4 year or 5 year degree going, I don't think I want to do this. So just research and all that. There's also non-clinical roles within the hospital. There's unit clerks, there's scribes, there's all these different roles that are available that are not requiring someone to have a license or a degree. It's non-clinical, and you can kind of see the operation of like, is this what I want to do? I knew with my mom and my brother being nurses, and they were talking about what was going on in their lives. I'm like, I couldn't do any of that. No. I don't mind seeing the sight of blood. That really doesn't bother me. But other bodily fluids, I just, no, no. So I was like, I'll go into healthcare. And the other recommendation I have for someone considering what career to go through is find something that is insulated from the economy and the recessions. Healthcare is always going to be there, always. Everybody's going to need healthcare no matter what we do in the future. Something that's somewhat insulated, like right now, real estate and banking getting rough because it follows the economy. And so if that's what you want to do, more power to you. But just know there's drawbacks to going in those kind of fields. But healthcare, everybody's going to need healthcare until we become robots, I guess. So we'll see.
okay, yeah, that's true. Well, thank you so much,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Chapman.
Thanks for asking me. This has been fun.
Yeah. And yeah, that's about it, guys. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Yeah, you've been in this for a long time. Yeah. And I've never, to be honest, like I haven't really had the I wait. Okay, yeah. You'll edit it out, right? Yeah.